In Megalopolis, the city of New Rome is hosting a conflict between Cesar Catilina, a brilliant artist in favor of a utopian future, and the greedy mayor Franklyn Cicero. Between the two of them is Julia Cicero, her loyalty divided between her father and her beloved Cesar Catilina. A full cast of very exciting characters. Megalopolis is a 2-hour, 20-minute epic from Francis Ford Coppola, director of The Godfather, Apocalypse Now, Bram Stoker's Dracula, and it is something. Man, people have talked about this movie might be brilliant. People have said it's the worst thing they've seen all year. We've really been looking forward to watching it. And in our film, I want to get to, before we talk about how it's actually made, the story inside the movie. Cesar Catilina is played by Adam Driver, this exciting architect working with this brand new material he's invented that he won the Nobel Prize off of, and he wants to build a new city, a new utopia out of the ruins of New Rome, a city that very much looks like New York City, but is Rome, right? It's Roman. It's this kind of mirrored version of America that we're looking at, very patriotic. Of course, Mayor Cicero is played by Giancarlo Esposito, who is a classic mayor and wants nothing to do with this new way of life. He thinks New Rome's great. In fact, he wants to build a new big casino instead of a park because that's going to bring people in, right? Natalie Emanuel plays his daughter, Julia Cicero. She is falling for this Cesar Catilina character, right? This black-clad architect who works at the top of the Empire State Building. And of course, there's Aubrey Plaza playing Wow Platinum, who's been getting a lot of attention on Twitter over the weekend. This local debutante who has a show on television where she keeps up with the stock market and interviews the mayor and Cesar Catilina, and really has her own means. Additionally, we've got Shia LaBeouf as Claudio Pulcher, who is quite the individual, the son of Jon Voight's character Hamilton Crassus III, who is the richest man in New Rome, owns all the banks. Shia LaBeouf's Claudio is a wreck. He hangs out with his sisters all the time and does drugs and parties. Just the classic, like, dad gave me everything kind of kid. And lastly, rounding out the cast, we've got Lawrence Fishburne as Fundi Romaine, who is Caesar's driver and also the narrator of our picture. Not quite Morpheus, but he got just a little bit of that Morpheus energy from The Matrix. And one of the most interesting things about Metropolis is how it was made. The story of how Metropolis has come together, or Megalopolis, good Lord, is how it was made. The story of how it came together and how we're getting to see it on screen. Despite the fact that it's not making money, it's Coppola's vision, and by God, he's going to put it out there for the world. And I want to talk about that. But first, we need to talk about the movie, the actual film, the 2 hours and 20 minutes that we watched. Andy, what did you think of Megalopolis?
So it's a complicated thing. I think overall I enjoyed it, and I kept needing to, about halfway through I needed to use the restroom, and I just couldn't get up because I was like, well, I don't this isn't a good, I feel like something important is happening and I don't want to miss it. And that happened through most of the film. It is indulgent, it is baroque, it is so much, it kind of doesn't make a lot of sense, but I kind of enjoyed it, and I have to commend the attempt. This is how great art is made, is by pushing limits, by turning everything up to 11. And sometimes it doesn't work. Most of the time it doesn't work when you go to the extremes, but there are bits of brilliancy in this. And I think more importantly, it's the kind of thing that will inspire others. Like if I were a director or a film student, like I would absolutely demand that people go see this, because it would only inspire your own storytelling, your own filmmaking. I think there's things that work. I think there's a lot that probably doesn't. I don't know who I could recommend this to, but at the same time, I almost feel like I need to recommend it to everyone, because I like people to be challenged in the cinema. It reminded me of, it was very Shakespearean because of the way people talk, and it's like a modern Shakespeare, almost like Romeo and Juliet, Baz Luhrmann's version of that. Also was reminded of Julie Taymor's Titus, which is based on the Shakespeare play Titus Andronicus, which starred Anthony Hopkins way back in the day. It's like from the late 90s. But it's a similar movie where it's Shakespearean, but everything else is modern. And it reminded me of this. I don't really know what this is kind of about ultimately, but it's such a big spectacle. I mean, I couldn't look away from the screen, and it's the kind of thing, like I would watch this again, I would revisit it again, but let's get into it.
Yeah, so I think it's important to talk about really quick for people at the top, and I want to talk about how it was made more at the end, but just briefly, if you're just stepping in here, if you haven't been listening to the show, if you don't know anything about Megalopolis, like you just saw a trailer or something and you're curious about this new Adam Driver movie that's out, let me give you the quick 60 seconds at the top. Francis Ford Coppola is functionally retired from directing. He owns a bunch of wineries. You've seen his wine around. They're in black bottles with gold rims, red wines. Good wine. He wants to make one more feature, Megalopolis. This movie has been dreaming about making for years, right? This film about an architect who builds this new utopia out of the ruins of a failing society, right? And he basically sells a bunch of wineries, puts $120 million into making Megalopolis, self-funds it like his other features, hires Driver and a bunch of other people who can't wait to work with him, and there's stories coming from the set that it's god-awful. He has no idea what he's doing. He's just pointing cameras in random places, and the actors are doing their best, and it's maybe coming together. We talked about it here on this show. Finally, screeners come out, and nobody wants to buy it to distribute. Lionsgate eventually jumps on it, and they put out a trailer. The trailer is made with AI and is half fake. They have to retract it and fire their PR company and put out a new one. They put out a new trailer. Finally, Megalopolis comes out with everybody saying it's going to be a flop. Statistically, there's no way this movie's going to do good. It's going to do terrible. We don't really know who it's for. But Coppola says, you know what? It's for me. That's why I'm making this movie, because I've wanted to make it forever, and by God, I'm going to do it. And the themes of the film echo his story. So I want to talk about that at the end, but I just wanted to get that out front for people who are maybe not sure what the rundown is for Francis Ford Coppola. That's how he came about making Megalopolis. Wrote and directed himself. Everything's come from him, the money, the decisions. He is the creative masterwork behind this thing. And I think at the end of it, once having actually seen the film, I can say that Coppola still has it sometimes. He still has it sometimes.
Yeah.
Because there are moments in this film. Yeah, there's sequences. There are shots that look so grand. Stuff that would be in Best Picture of the Year. Like, incredible work. There's other sequences that are so awful and so bad, you can't believe they're still in the movie. Like, how did you guys leave this in? There are whole scenes that are brutally ADR'd with characters on screen, which is always a quick indication that they put this together in editing. They cut a scene, they're filling for time. People have abilities, supernatural abilities that they can use at the beginning of the film that they never use for anything relevant throughout the runtime ever. And then it just kind of comes up again at the end. Baffling decisions, stuff that all leads to these stories from the set, that Coppola doesn't really have a clear vision. He doesn't know exactly what he's doing. It's a lot for one man to hold and put together. And I see all that, but I also see the brilliance of it. And I also see this creative streak from a man who had functionally otherwise stepped away from filmmaking to say, you know what? I got one more in me. I'm going to come out for it. And in that way, Megalopolis is a really fun watch. But if I didn't know any of that, if I had just bought a ticket and wandered into this movie like, oh yeah, okay, I'll check that movie out, whatever, I got a few hours to burn at the theater, I think I would have been really disappointed. And I think that's where most people are coming out on Megalopolis.
Yeah, I mean, your mileage will vary for sure. But yeah, and I'm not real sure what he's trying to say. You know, it's kind of about the future. It looks very like Ayn Randian. Everyone's in weird neo-Roman garb. Like everyone has like a little Caesar haircut, which is kind of funny, and has like Roman like kind of armor, but it still has like regular clothes and drive regular cars. There is this substance, this like supernatural or super material called a megalon, which Caesar is attempting to build like this utopian part of the city, and it like a destroyed part of New York, would now call New Rome, out of this miracle substance called megalon. That, you know, he's like, we will build a utopia, it will be better, there will be a city on a hill, all those kinds of things. And everyone's like, no, you're not really going to do that. Like, there's conflicting interest, but it's kind of unclear what they are. The daughter Julia, played by Natalie Emmanuel, she's kind of the bad girl of the mayor. She falls in love with Caesar. Shia LaBeouf's character he wants to inherit the bank, but he's like the powers that be, like father and uncle, are like, no, you're too wild, you're too, you know, whatever, you'll never be anyone. And so he has his own like revenge schemes. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but at the same time, I couldn't look away, and I was like, I'm here for the ride. I was glued to it the whole time.
Yeah, it's got a weird structure. Like I realized about halfway through it, I was like, I don't think this is a 3-act structure. And I actually think it is, having seen the whole thing. I think it's just executed poorly. But for people who go see movies a lot, like Andy and and I don't know, any other critics, anybody else doing a movie podcast that you know, it is a wildly different because it is not predictable. Like you can't predict where it's going next because Coppola's all over the map. It seems to take place over the course of, I think, a year. You seem to have kind of consistent season changes throughout the film, but it doesn't feel like it, and events are not displayed as if they happen over 1 year. It could be 5 for all I know. Some characters will have a conversation, and then the seasons will change, and they'll be having the other half of that conversation, but 2 characters may have died in between there. And I'm like, when did this all happen? Like, the passage of time is strange. Additionally, New Rome looks terrible. It is a mix of, it looks so bad. It is a mix of like stock footage of New York with some color grading. Yeah. And stuff that like Coppola shot out in the streets, which looks good. Yeah. You'll have like you said, these characters with these like Roman haircuts and these like gilded stuff and these like big toga dresses, you know, out partying and having a good time. And then it'll cut to a stock footage shot of like people getting on the subway in New York, and then like the skyline with a building that has the MetLife logo on it. It's so goofy. Yeah, it's like, what am I looking at here? And the film explains this through narration by Lawrence Fishburne, which is solid, by the way. And title cards, these big, like etched in stone looking marble title cards that will pop up. It even opens with one when it explains that like we are in New Rome. It is the 21st century. It is not quite like the world we live in. It's a little bit different. You know, it's patriotic and it's America, but it's not America. And Coppola seems to have cooked up that like telling this story of like the revitalization of America through the eyes of a Roman Empire, like echoes through time, and also is a little bit more universal for audiences overseas. Because I think this movie ultimately is about like the world and humanity. Like it's less about like America versus everyone else. And this, like, giving it that kind of Roman zeal gives it a little bit of style and a little bit of flair without, I think, removing it from everybody in the world. Like theoretically anybody could watch Megalopolis, even though it is a uniquely American tale.
Yeah, it really is. And Coppola has said that this is kind of a bit of a parallel to the upcoming election, which isn't.
Oh yeah. Oh dude.
Which I'm like, oh god, please don't make those kind of parallels. But yeah, it's about like his central thesis, while I don't think it's really executed very well, is, you know, about building a better future, thinking about the future, not just the now. Like we have to envision things to be so much better than they are, or dream bigger than reality. These kinds of very high and mighty platitudes and ideas. It's still kind of its own bizarre thing, though.
Yeah, on top of the stock footage, like it uses a lot of montage with this like weird 3-split like frame that Coppola just starts using in the movie and then just continues through the rest of the movie. Like you put 2 lines down the thirds of the frame, and then you have 3 different images going, and it'll be Adam Driver building some kind of thing out of Megalon, and then Adam Driver like in his office like pacing back and forth, and then like somebody holding up a blueprint, and then another one will cut to, it's like these montages of like stuff happening without actually showing you anything that's happening. Like this extends notably to Adam Driver's profession as this kind of architect. It's a whole lot of him pacing in his office, but you never see him like actually building anything out of this stuff.
Yeah,
you do see it. They do have
down
this like
a lot.
Yeah, it's like this floating gem substance material that sometimes reflects images and sometimes doesn't. And then he's like talking about building a thing and stressing about building the thing. And he's at the office late at night again, building the thing. But you know, like he never does anything. This stuff just kind of gets built off screen, which is really baffling. And it's not nearly as straightforward as our antagonists in Jon Voight as Crassus and his son Shia LaBeouf as Claudio, and even a little bit of Aubrey Plaza as Platinum, who's great, by the way. She's a lot of fun. They both are very on the nose characters. Crass and Claude are their names. Good God. Like they're not nearly as classy as Cesar Catilina, right? The esteemed architect.
Yeah. I was certain this was kind of going to do a Julius Caesar thing, and he was going to get. They were all going to surround him and kill him. But it's not that kind of story. Aubrey Plaza is great as this. She's kind of this social climber. She's initially in a relationship with Adam Driver's Caesar. But then she quickly marries Jon Voight's banker character because she's positioning herself. She also seeks power and money, and so she's kind of jumping from relationship to relationship as whatever benefits her, as opposed to Natalie Emmanuel's very kind of like, oh, I'm here about true love, and like I'm here to challenge Adam Driver, tell me to go back to the club. Which is a great line from
the movie's full of great line reads. It really feels like Coppola just picked like the wackiest line reads out of every take he got. Like just whoever if Dustin Hoffman says something weird, that's the one I'm using. Adam Driver says go back to the club, I'm using that one. Like, and so the movie's full of it. Like it's a really good cast saying the oddest damn things. Like it's really something.
Giancarlo Esposito as Mayor Cicero is great, and again, finally not just being a Gus Fring style role and character. He has so much more dimension in this as the rival mayor who is corrupt and all those things, but he kind of represents like the way things are and kind of the status quo and what has always worked and will always work, and you can't build a better future because there is no better future to build. Like everyone is so Shakespearean in their character, and like a lot of people walked away from this film, like Zendaya walked away, other high profile actors, but the cast is stacked, and it's like these people, like, you don't do the film if you don't believe in it and you're like the leads, like all these people are. And I feel like all these people wanted to be involved. I mean, also people like Chloe Fineman, who is primarily on Saturday Night Live, it has a small role in this because it's like, well, she got to work with Coppola, and there's a few people like that in this. Like people just wanted to be attached to the project, even if it's an utter disaster in the end.
Yeah, definitely. Dustin Hoffman's in it. Yeah, Adam Driver talked about that in an interview. He said working with Coppola was one of his most pleasant experiences ever on set. He's like, God, he's so collaborative. He wanted to work with me on everything. He wanted to get involved. Meanwhile, Giancarlo Esposito is having a good time. God, he's talked about in interviews how tired he is of playing Gus Fring. It is a delight seeing him play something different and something exciting, even if his character looks like he fell straight out of Joel Schumacher's Batman. Along with every other press reporter in this movie, they're wearing like fedoras with like little bills sticking out that's like extra like it's great. Like they look so goofy, and I like that New Rome is crumbling. Things are not going good in New Rome. There's poverty, there's problems, buildings are falling down and being demolished, and the mayor is like, no, everything's good, vote for me. That's a lot of fun. And then of course there's Cesar Catilina, who's like, no, things are really bad and we got to do something different. He's definitely pompous, he's definitely preachy, he's definitely over the top. His dialogue reads like Coppola's personal manifesto, and like it is difficult to keep up with. But Driver is a ton of fun, dude. He's a ton of fun. I saw this movie, I watched it Sunday mornings. There's almost nobody in my theater. Couple people in the back. One woman who I think was about our age sitting just a couple seats down from me in like the middle, and then me. That woman, couple seats down, huge driver stand. Dude, she was dying laughing at this movie. It's probably the funniest comedy she'll watch all year. She thought he was so funny. Like his line reads are honest and genuine, and like there's definitely some funny bits. There's definitely some funny bits unintentionally in Megalopolis, which I think adds to the experience for people like us who are going to see something different.
Yeah, it's really fun. I wanted to just point out that Aubrey Plaza is having like a really great week because she's in this. She's in another movie called Mild Ass, where it's like a time travel thing with like she meets her younger self or something like that. She's also in Disney Plus Agatha All Along. So it's like season of Aubrey Plaza this like couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I'm so glad too, because when we watched that Child's Play remake, she's the mom in that, and I remember seeing her show up, and I thought, oh God, her career's over. Rip, it's done. Like, you're playing a mom character in a cheesy B-movie remake. Like, oh no.
Back it up.
Yeah, and here she is, killing it. She's on Agatha All Along. She's in Megalopolis. Of course, Megalopolis is a flop, but hey, it's historic, right? And I think, like, to bring the conversation kind of full circle, like, regarding the way this movie's made, Andy, how do we square that with listeners? If you know the story of Coppola and how he got it made, I think you have a bit more respect for it. But objectively, by itself, I don't think Megalopolis is that good, right? Am I crazy? What do you think?
I mean, I think there's things to be praised and criticized, and like I said, I enjoy seeing a director like just pull out all the stops and just go to 11. I'm sure the accountants and at Lionsgate and stuff will be like point to this and say, see, this is why we rein in directors. This is why we give studio notes so this kind of thing doesn't happen. Because like business wise, no, it's a terrible thing. It's a disaster. But you make great art by constantly pushing your limits.
Yeah, you really do. And like I think ultimately that's the story of Megalopolis, but also the story of how Megalopolis got made. Like Megalopolis is not made because it's easy. It's not made because it makes the most money. Like it's made because it's the natural extension of where humanity's going. And more importantly, it's made because the best art is made to challenge people, not to please. And this is something that Hollywood hates, man. Every Marvel movie is made to please. It's made to please as many people as possible, right? That's what Disney does. That's what Paramount, that's what everybody does. Universal, like we're making stuff that's going to hit all quadrants. We're going to make as much money as possible. And it's going to go to streaming. And we're going to Megalopolis dares to say, no, I'm not doing it. I'm making this because I think it's weird and I think it's cool. And yeah, it's expensive, but by God, it's mine. And Francis Ford Coppola put it out there. And now here he is. For every bad scene, I can think of an equal and opposite scene that would be used for like the Criterion Collection cover for Megalopolis. Like for everything I didn't like, there's something that's composed so perfect, that's put together so great. I can't help but say, of course, it came from Coppola. It's weird. It's a weird movie, and I don't know if I'll make it. It'll make my top 10 this year, but it's almost guaranteed for the new and noteworthy. It might be the most noteworthy picture of 2024. Like, because if you know what's happening here, you can't help but want to talk about it. It stirs conversation.
Yeah, I kind of felt the same way, like where there were parts where I was confused and not sure what we're doing. And there's this like they did a Ben-Hur style horse racing thing when there's actual horses. And I'm just like, this is huge spectacle. I can't deny like the ambition of it, the vision of it.
Right. Yeah, it's just so odd. A really unique picture though. Man, I'm glad I watched it. Any other thoughts or recommendations, Andy?
I'm ready.
Andy, would you recommend Megalopolis?
So this is a complicated one. I would say save it for streaming unless if you're really, really interested to see what he's trying to do for it. I would say it is best seen in the theater because it is such a visual kind of feast in a lot of ways. If you're a little skeptical, I would say save it for streaming. I do think it is worth checking out. I think it's important to challenge audiences. Probably don't recommend it for like your family watch on like Christmas dinner or Thanksgiving, something like that. But I think check it out, save it for streaming. May not be for everyone though.
Yeah, I think I'm going to tell most people to pass on Megalopolis. I would say if you don't know anything about it, if you're not really interested, just wait for it to come to streaming and you can throw it on and you'll get 20 or 30 minutes into it and be like, what is going on here? And maybe you'll finish it and maybe you won't. I think it's something that like it spurns curiosity. You want to see what's going on in Megalopolis because you're just like, what is happening in this picture? And it's odd and it's strange, but I'm really glad I watched it. And I'm really glad Coppola made it. I hope it does get a Criterion Collection ad. Feels like it'd be perfect. And I know they need the money. So like, why not, right? Like you might as well put this movie everywhere you can to try to get some people to watch it. So we'll see. I would love it if it made it in the vault. But man, that's Megalopolis. What a feature. And speaking of features, I'm excited to talk about these next couple. Andy, what do we call this segment?
It's time for the trailer park.